So I sculpted Jak from Jak and Daxter. I favored the Jak version of the precursor legacy, and I've learned a couple of things as I was sculpting Jak. But first, before I tell you what I learned, let me tell you why I selected Jak. You might say that, well, it's because he's on the Guinness World Records top 50 video game characters of all time. He placed 26th. And sure, that would be a reason to sculpt Jak. But for me, it goes deeper than that. For me, sculpting Jak was about fond memories. When this game came out, my brother and I would sit on his couch playing this game, and our wives would just watch us play. It was a great time that I had with him, and I always look back at it as some of my favorite times that I was able to spend with my brother. You might think we played this game because of the mechanics. The mechanics in this game were fantastic. Naughty Dog really worked hard at ensuring that Jak was a fun character to move around the game world. And true, the mechanics are a reason to play. You might also think just the overall gameplay, the mini games that they added to this game, where it was constantly changing the style of gameplay. Some of the gameplay was good for a certain type of player's skill, and other gameplay was good for another type of player's skill. So there were actually areas of the game that I was better than my brother, and there were areas that he was better than me. So that absolutely made the game a ton of fun to play. But honestly, I think what made this game so great was the story. The cutscenes, you got hooked in by them, and you had to know what was going to happen next. When we played this game, our wives just watched because they were following along with the story, not because they wanted to play. And the story, that was truly what made this game something that you came back to. As it went, and I won't give you any major spoilers, but as it went, the game follows Jak and his friend Daxter, who's been transformed into an Autocell by Dark Eco. The duo learns that a pair of rogue sages are planning to release Eco, and Dark Eco corrupts everything that it comes in contact with. So as the story goes, they're trying to figure out a way to get Daxter transformed back from this Autocell into a person. And so that's kind of the premise of the story and their little adventure that they go on. So one of the things I learned with this particular sculpt involved Jak's hair. I don't sculpt a lot of hair. Usually I use curves, and I put geometry around the curve, and I'll do multiple curves, and I'll even shape the geometry that the curve is adapting so that I can create hair, and that works really well for me. But in this particular instance, really a couple of sculpts ago, one of the things I started trying to do was sculpt a large portion of hair, and what I would use that large portion of hair was a guide for the curves. I would lay them over that large portion of hair, and it would help me guide them so that I could have more of a flowing and know kind of how I wanted the hair shaped before just going in with a bunch of random curves. With Jak, though, I didn't use curves, and one of the things I did was I progressively upped my resolution, which if you're having problems knowing when to up your resolution, try practicing sculpting hair over and over and over again. Because one of the things that this did is it helped me polish my hair. And this just showed me in general, I feel like I learned a lot about polishing a sculpt, because you can add big detail, add a little bit of resolution, carve that resolution down, then add more detail, add a little more resolution, carve that resolution down, and you keep in this iterative process. And in the end, what you're left with is a very smooth, very crisp looking sculpt. And so I feel like this really helped me with like, oh, okay, because I've heard of sculptors talking about they're polishing their sculpts. I never really knew what that meant. But when I was sculpting this hair, I felt like that gave me just a little bit of insight as to what they were talking about. So if you're struggling with knowing when to up your resolution, I would encourage you to find a model that has hair that you like and keep sculpting that hair over and over and over again, but also do it iteratively and see where that takes you, because I feel like that for me gave me just some insights. Not by any means do I really know or do I consider myself a pro at this, a very, very beginner level for sure, but it gave me some insights into that iterative process and that polishing. Another thing I learned with this sculpt is how vital it is to just add a few basic wrinkles to your clothing. Initially, I did a few renders that I thought where I really considered the sculpt done. I was like, yeah, this is done. I'm happy with this. There was something about it that looked too clean and just not quite right. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to add a multi-resolution modifier to the tunic, and I'm just going to sculpt in a few wrinkles. Nothing major, nothing crazy. Sculpting in wrinkles on clothing has always been a challenge for me. I've never felt really good at it, so I tend to shy away from it. But if you want to improve as an artist, you've got to dive into the things that are difficult for you, right? So I just went and tried that. And again, with this, I didn't go crazy. I didn't do anything super impressive. I'm sure it looks, very beginner in terms of sculpting clothing, but it really added so much detail to the final render that really made me want to do it and push it more. And so in my next render, I definitely want to try and just do a little more sculpting on clothing and try and get a little more experience there as well. Another thing I did that I think really worked well, that I've often found difficult in other pieces, was collars. I feel like the collar is always something that is very difficult for me. And what I did differently in this piece is the collar and the tunic are two separate pieces. Yeah, in the render, it doesn't really look like that. Maybe if you look really close, you could tell in some instances, but for the most part, it doesn't look like that. It really made it so much easier to do the collar, and all I did was I selected the vertices on the upper edge of the tunic that I wanted to be the bottom of the collar. I duplicated them, I separated them into a separate object, and then I shaped those into the collar. I don't know why, but just for some reason, if it's all one object, I struggle making it look good. Maybe there's a process you know of or a video that you can recommend that will point me in the right direction so I can improve in that. But those are some things that I learned while sculpting Jak. I was talking a little bit about the storytelling of Jak before as the reason that I played this game, and it really did draw you in. It always made you want to know what's happening next, and that's what kept you coming back to the game. In today's entertainment industry, there is no shortage of action-packed games, but there is a shortage of games that have great stories. So to all you developers out there, especially you indie developers that are creating your games, creating your dream game, remember, particle systems may sell games, but great stories will make your game a legend. Thanks so much for watching.